Yo, what's up? It's Andrew Foltz, and in this video, we're going to talk about how to create a simple productivity system that channels your creativity. But before we get to that, let me ask you a question. Do you consider yourself to be an organized person? Because for a long time, I thought that if I started doing all of this scheduling and planning and analyzing in my life, it was actually going to make my creativity shrivel up like Dracula in front of a silver cross. Damn, bruh. When I quit my agency copywriting job, I thought I could get rid of all of the boring stuff like timesheets, check-ins, meetings, and processes. But as my responsibilities started to pile up with proposals and managing clients and invoicing, it started to feel like my business was running me instead of the other way around. It took a ton of trial and error for me to figure out how to create a system that was simple enough to actually work. But now I'm going to share that with you guys so that you can start improving your productivity and your focus right now and not in 3 years. If you're a creative person, your brain is kind of a messy place, but that actually enables you to make connections where other people just see business as usual. But unfortunately, it can also feel a bit like trying to herd cats. So the simplest way to channel your creativity and not strangle it is to get all of your ideas down onto a piece of paper. And the cool thing about writing things down is that it helps your ideas stay put. Like, you can get a better look at them when they're down on a piece of paper and they're not squirming around. And when you do this, you can actually start to recognize patterns and problems and opportunities that you couldn't see when your thoughts were just going all over the place in your brain. Paper is also less distracting. It's not trying to tempt you with related videos and personality quizzes. It's just paper. So in the summer of 2016, after taking on one too many nightmare projects, I just nosedived into creative burnout. Out of desperation, I started writing in a journal that a friend had given me back in high school. And it was like almost immediately I started to catch these really obvious mistakes that I was making. For example, I wrote one day about how I was just like robotically Googling Facebook every time I got bored. And just writing that down onto a piece of paper made it so clear to me like how ridiculous this was and how addicted I had become to social media and Facebook in specific. The cool thing is you don't even have to be a writer to start journaling. You can literally just make a bullet list of a few things that happened every day, and just taking 2 minutes to do that can be the difference between making progress towards your goal and just going around in circles in your own head. So the second most important thing you can do as a creative person is to create a to-do list. But this is actually a little harder than it sounds because apps are a gateway drug, so they're really distracting, and traditional to-do lists make you look at all of your tasks at the same time every time you look at it, which is kind of overwhelming. So the solution I came up with is called the exploding to-do list, and you can actually build one really easily with some cardboard, rubber band, and some paper cut into 4 1/4 by 1 inch strips. So essentially it's a flip book that allows you to maximize your focus by always knowing what one thing you should be working on. You can get along pretty well with good old-fashioned pen and paper, but that strategy starts to break down when you're working with bigger, more complex projects or longer-term goals. So that's where technology becomes really useful. Apps like Notion allow you to rearrange information, view it in different formats, and have a single source of truth that you can access from anywhere. It's like Adrian Belew says, digital for storage and quickness, and analog for fatness and warmth. Creative people live and die by their routines, and I know it sounds kind of dull, but actually doing certain things the same way every day frees up a ton of energy and brain power. So the easiest way to do this is by creating a weekly schedule that you can reference every night when you're writing your to-do list for the next day. You want to ask yourself, what is the most essential thing for me to be doing right now? What one thing would impact every other part of my business or life and make everything else easier? I found when I actually made my focus smaller, my productivity doubled. I got more done because I would focus on one thing, get that thing done, and then free up the rest of my day to continue working on things, as opposed to trying to work on too many things and just spinning my wheels and not getting any of them done. It's great to have big long-term goals, but you're not going to be motivated by a fuzzy roadmap. So you need to break them down into achievable steps. And I do this in a Notion board called priorities. So you can use this strategy to create a goal funnel. So as you complete the short-term goals that you have, the long-term goals get shifted to the left. And what this does is it makes sure that you're always making progress. You'll always know what you're supposed to be working on. I like to review my priorities on a weekly basis just to make sure I'm not drifting off course. And I always ask myself, are these goals and these tasks really getting me to where I want to go, or am I just doing busy work? Not everything in your productivity system has to be about doing something new. If you spend too much time learning and not enough time reflecting, you can end up with a leaky bucket situation where half the water is falling through the cracks on the bottom. It's like Gary Keller says in The One Thing. If your to-do list contains everything, then it's probably taking you everywhere but where you really want to go. So documentation is not a sexy word, I'll give you that, but you know what's even less sexy? Making the same mistakes over and over and over for a decade because you're always too busy to write down the things that you were learning along the way. You don't have to be a medieval monk about it, but if you're going to a networking event or reading a book or working with clients, just take a few minutes to write down 3 to 10 things that you learned from that experience. If you store those notes somewhere accessible, then you're gonna have a stockpile of solutions to fall back on the next time you get stuck. Learning for the sake of learning is totally pointless. Instead, you wanna start thinking about your life in chunks. My favorite strategy for this is to set one goal for each day, week, and month. So for example, when I choose an article to write about for After Lines, I'll spend all week reading books and going to events and practicing skills that all revolve around that one idea. When I was in high school, my mom used to berate me for not leaving my keys in the same place every time. But then I'd be like, well, how do I leave them in the same place if I can't remember to leave them in the same place? Likewise, what's the point of a fancy productivity system if you forget to use it? A good way to deal with this is through mental allowances, which is a psychology term for taking a task out of your brain and then moving it into the physical world as a reminder. So here's an example from my life. I was always forgetting to look at my to-do list when I woke up in the morning, so I started hanging it in front of my door with a paper clip so that when I woke up, I would literally run into it. So the worst productivity system is the one that you never use because it's too complicated. So the simplest way to get started is just to do a few bullet points in a journal every day to describe what happened, and then also make sure you keep a to-do list or exploding to-do list with you so you always have one focus at a time and you're not moving in a million directions. From there, you can mix in an app like Notion to start documenting your notes and creating a schedule that helps you move from monthly milestones to weekly goals and then daily tasks. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you found it helpful, drop a comment below and let me know what your one milestone is going to be for next week. If you're feeling a little bit lost about how to implement this whole productivity thing, remember you can always book a free discovery coaching call with me. I will put a link to that in the description below. You can also get in touch with me at AfterLines on Twitter. Again, if you found this video helpful, subscribe because I'm going to be releasing more content like it. And if you have creative friends, family, or coworkers, send them over to this video because they might find it helpful too. And until next time, I'll see you later.